Good day, I bid to all. Today we will be uncovering the truth about the dark side of the internet. Together with me today is all our respected panels that will be sharing their 2 cents about this topic. With the rise of technologies in communication, social media platform is helping us to connect with more people. However, there are also some unfortunate side of this technology as cyberbullying is happening more frequently, especially among teenagers. With that being said, I would like to ask Ms. Atira to shed some light on the examples and ways to overcome cyberbullying at an individual perspective. Please welcome.
Thank you, Shira, for the question. As we all know, there are a lot of examples of cyberbullying these days. The closest example that we all can see is social media bullying, which happens every single day on any social media platform such as Twitter and Facebook. Secondly is impersonation, which is also an example of cyberbullying, whereby the bully tends to hack into the victim's personal accounts to pretend to be them and spread false rumor online.
Excuse me, Atira, I would like to add some points. Given from Ms. Atira that social media cyberbullying is one of the example of cyberbullying. This shows that how social media can be the primary weapon for bullies. An individual tends to cyberbully when they found that cyberbully feel anonymous, which give them more incentive to be aggressive as they think there will be no consequences, which is true. In real life, if you want to say something terrible to someone or vent yourself to them, it's a lot tougher to confront them in person because concept of getting in trouble if the person rats you out. With the internet, you can use that anonymous nature to feel powerful and untouchable, as they think they can't be hurt by anyone or anything and people can't find out who or where they are. Thus, they feel they will never be getting in trouble. With that, they attack in harsher ways than they would in real life. This can cause long-term negative effects on the victims. The victims will withdraw from social to avoid being judged by people as the bully's word might influence them. Thus, they often feel depressed and restless, making them anxious about going to school or work. They also display decreased interest in activities that they used to enjoy and begin doing poorly at things that they do. They experience insecurity, loneliness, humiliation, self-pity, and struggle to make emotional attachment with people. They harbor anger and vengefulness toward the bullies, resulting in the victims either exerting revenge or opting for suicide. In other words, it can affect the victim's mental health.
Thank you, Camelia, for what you just elaborated just now. I completely agree with all the points being said. Now, I would like to elaborate something regarding Ms. Shira's second question, which is ways to overcome cyberbullying from individual perspective. So, as an individual, it is best to learn to address cyberbullying instead of condoning the behavior. A lot of people these days tend to overlook the fact that most people are cyberbullying others because of the trivial things that others do on social media platforms. Instead, they tend to join and spread hurtful words toward the other party without even realizing that they are also in the wrong. Besides, it is also a good move to not retaliate by doing the same thing back to the bully, especially for the victims themselves. Also, we can block and report the bullies as all social media platforms have these two basic features. So I guess that is all for me. Thank you, Miss Shira.
Thank you, Akira and Kemia, for the sharing. I do agree with both panel that cyberbullying can affect the victim's mental health in a long term. And however, I do believe that there are some solutions that can be done beforehand to prevent this cyberbullying. So, how about Miss Esther? Can you share us your thoughts about this matter?
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Shira, for the questions. I believe that there are multiple ways to overcome the cyberbullying from happening to the users. As for the society, specifically as an adult or a parent to the youngster, they can help to prevent the cyberbullying by being a good role model to them. For example, by not spreading hatred in workplace and home, or avoid leaving bad comments in the media social. So when they go against the cyberbullying, the youngster will not normalize the disrespectful attitude towards others on the internet. The society should show to the youngsters that they have choice, which is to stay respectful even though they are upset, and let them see that any miscommunication could be settled by reaching the person directly rather than bashing them on media social. The main thing is be a good example because everything starts from home, and perhaps the best initiative as a society or as a parent is that we should teach them to keep their personal information as private because not everything can be shared to the public. And lastly, for the government, I believe that a strong measure and the law should be enforced to prevent the cyberbullying. For example, by giving harsh penalties to the people who are involved in the cyberbullying as a reminder and as a lesson to the other users as well. And also, I believe that the government can collaborate with the university or the schools to conduct an awareness campaign to bring more exposure to the students about the do and don'ts on the internet. Yes, that's all from me, Miss Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther, for the sharing. I couldn't agree more with her point just now that strong measures should be taken on those who are committing cyberbullying. So maybe we can dig deeper into this victim's mental health itself because mental health is something that affects the way we think, feel, and act, and it usually includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So may I ask Ashikin to share with us the examples of mental health problems due to cyberbullying and how can we cope with this illness as an individual?
Thank you, Shira, for the explanation. I believe that there are several types of mental illness, and the one that closely related to cyberbullying is depression. Depression is classified as a mood disorder, and it can be described as a feeling of sadness, loss, or anger that will affect a person's everyday activities. However, different people will experience depression in a different ways. And to cope with mental illness, there are several things that can be done by individual. One of them is to take care of your body. For your information, taking care of yourself physically can improve your mental health. Therefore, you need to make sure that you eat nutritious food, drink plenty of water, avoid smoking or vaping, do exercises, and get enough sleep. Other than that, you can also do things in the opposite way your emotions tell you to do. For example, if you are feeling upset and you want to isolate yourself, then you need to go out and be around people, which is the opposite action of isolation. And even though this technique is probably one of the hardest, but if you manage to do it, the results are incredible. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shikin, for sharing with us. I do believe that depression is one of the leading mental illness due to cyberbullying. With that being said, can I ask Aisha to share with us what are the causes and effects of mental illness?
Okay, thank you, Shira, for the opportunity. There are several causes of mental health problems, such as childhood trauma and genetics. Childhood trauma often affects the way someone sees themselves, in which they tend to self depreciate. When prolonged, this eventually will lead to depression. Other than that, genetics play a role in the likeliness of someone having a depression. Based on studies, people who have a family member with mental illness are more likely to develop one themselves. Next, there are several effects of mental illness on an individual, such as lowered productivity and health problems. Those who are mentally ill tend to experience lower productivity as they may experience difficulty in focusing and completing their tasks, especially when they are having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, etc. Other than that, mentally ill people are most likely to suffer from additional health problems. For instance, patients with comorbid depression are 3 times less likely to adhere to medical treatment regimens compared to non-depressed patients. These are just few of many other effects of mental illness towards an individual. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha, for the sharing. We can see that this mental illness is really affecting a huge deal in a person's life. So maybe, my Sarah, as our last panel for today, can you share with us what can we do to cope with this illness?
Thank you, Shira. For my part, I would like to address the stigma that is surrounding mental health. Mental health will always be treated differently than physical health, and this needs to stop as it is equally important for our overall health. Hence, we should also consider the society and government's perspective on this matter. The key point of removing stigma in mental health is by raising awareness. In society's part, we can raise awareness on mental health by talking about this topic more openly and expose it to other people. This can be done in person or via social media platforms. Furthermore, we can raise awareness by educating individuals, especially to the younger generation. When they are aware of this topic earlier in life, we can break the cycle of discrimination in mental health. Furthermore, the government also has an important role of removing stigma in mental health. One of the many ways is by giving a better cooperation towards mental health. An example of this is to improve access to mental health care and encourage the development of novel drugs and therapies for the treatment of mental health conditions. If this is taken into consideration, we can promote a better mental well being to everyone. That is all from me.
Thank you, Maisara, for sharing with us. Well, I'm sure we have covered a lot of issues that is related to our topic. So to conclude our forum today, I would like to end with a quote by Janaka Holat that goes, replace cyberbullying with cyberbelieving. Let us build up each other instead of bringing others down. We believe and build. With that, I end this forum with Assalamualaikum and thank you.